Welcome to Smokin Bulls, the podcast about business, money, and lifestyle. Today we're talking to Adnan Brkic about his experience in vacation rental properties. I'm Tyler.
I'm Dave.
Let's get into it. So, Adnan, you've got a vacation rental property. You're new into this this industry, I guess, if you want to call it that. What got you started in it? What made you look into it?
Great question. I wanted somewhere to get away, especially during COVID, to get away and relax and detach, where it wouldn't cost me too much money. And so I had landed on purchasing a property in a high demand area where you can rent it out. And the concept I had to accept is that other people would be using that property when I was gone. So similar to, you're going on all inclusive, you're in that hotel room, it's not yours, other people are using it. So that's the one big hurdle that I think people need to get around if they are interested in doing something similar. And what I had looked at are attractive areas in North America. We didn't want to travel too far, preferably not by airplane. And so that left the west side of Canada and the U.S. And most of the west of Canada is fairly expensive, fairly high valuation, whatever you want to call it. And so we ended up finding a little pocket of opportunity in southern British Columbia where there was a lot of demand and not a lot of hotels. And that's, I think, where the secret is. There's not enough lodging for the amount of people that want to go there. And so that's why we ended up establishing a base there.
Right on. So that's why you looked at a place you wanted to escape from COVID a little bit, or at least have your own escape for future pandemics that we might run into. And I assume that buying this property means added costs, and turning it into a vacation rental allows you to recoup some of those costs. I know you're new into this, so you're just getting your first opportunity to rent it out. What's the experience been like? Are you going to be able to kind of break even on it? Is it going to pay for itself? Like, what are you looking at?
Good question. It looks like, and the early indications are that it'll pay for itself, most definitely, and we have a small possibility of making money on it, wow. Which would be great.
Do you get to use it too?
Or we get to use okay. We get to use it as well. Not as often as I'd like, but we get to use it.
Yeah.
The surprise was the amount of people that can know about your property by listing on a website like Airbnb or another short-term rental property website. They do all the advertising for you. We had 0 reviews, nothing, but if you're in the right spot, that demand will come. And so that was a shock. I thought we'd have to do more marketing, et cetera, and pay for a lot more advertising. We had to do none of that. Now, when it comes to startup costs, renovation, et cetera, and a lot more work and effort in the garden and making tall, thin grass green, a lot more work than I expected. Yeah. But now that we're finished, I'm happy that we did it, and I'm looking forward to enjoying it.
Cool. So Airbnb or systems like that, do they almost act like a realtor and come in and do photos, like create your posting for you, or are you having to put stuff like that together?
We put it all together. They just act as a listing platform online.
Okay.
There are a number of services associated around short-term rentals. I mean, it's been I think it's no longer burgeoning. It's a growing, very large industry. I mean, we've seen Airbnb, the actual company list, it's publicly traded. It's valued higher than a lot of large hotel chains, and that's because I think people, when they visit a vacation property or a place, they'd rather feel like they're at home, and a short-term rental allows that, whereas a hotel rental sometimes doesn't.
Yeah, I've talked to people before, and I have a property like yourself that we use, but I'm of the opinion, why do I want it to sit empty for 10 months of the year? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you think of things like gold. You're not going to get a dividend from it. Warren
Right.
Buffett, that's his big thing, right? You can fit all the gold in the infield of a baseball park in a cube.
Yeah.
And you can make a ton of money of dividends off of large companies by putting your money to work. So. But some people, I think, they don't want somebody in their property. That's a really big one.
That's
so they're willing to forego that, or they consider it hassle factor, because there's a bit of a hassle factor. But I mean, I see it as an asset that, especially with growing costs of real estate, it's very hard then to just own a property for your use only, and you just get despondent when you don't even get there. So because you don't hit it enough and you're like, well, we own this, like, so some people probably buy it for the wrong reasons and end up selling it because they don't use it.
Right.
And some, maybe those people are matched up with the fact that they also don't want anybody in their place. So that's why it doesn't get used. There's no value in it. So they get rid of it. But
right.
I think you can afford a lot more property if you're willing to use that property. Look at after the pandemic, a lot of what we have, whether it's even office buildings, condo, especially downtown cores, a lot of this is going to start converting to shared space, meaning, your neighbor could be running his office out of his condo and you live in your condo, and, there's all sorts of cross uses that are going to happen. It's the same with your property. It's a residence for you and it's a short-term residence for others. And who knows what comes with that. But that's part of being a landlord. But there's lots of ways to get your information out there. That's for sure.
That's true. I agree. And I think if someone is interested in this concept and offsetting some of that ownership cost and renting it out, as long as they're okay crossing that gulf, which is allowing people into your property, a great website and resource that I use that I'm not affiliated with is called AirDNA. And they actually look at the short-term rentals available in whatever area you're looking at and show you their estimate of how much revenue they're drawing, how much they're charging per night, and the amount of supply-demand you get. Prior to that website existing, there was no resource for you as a buyer to go in and gauge demand and even throw a dart at how much you might be able to make.
Set your price here. It's not renting. Drop your price here. It's still not renting. Drop your price. The whole season goes by.
You create your own
didn't
graph.
really work out. Yeah.
Just put that into an Excel and graph it.
So when I think of the property that we have, it's, we've had it for years in our family, and we recently renovated it and built it bigger, partly because it's quite a distance from where we live. So you ever have anybody visit, you got to hold two families. It's not us leaving and someone else coming in and using it. They're there with us. So you need a bit more space. So that becomes, when I'm renting mine, that there's two families going in a lot of times to use that space. I think yours will handle that amount of people as well. But, in the end, you're used to the fact that somebody's coming in there. It's getting good use. I don't see why it's not a good idea, especially like you said with the sites that are out there now that can help you with that. We use somebody to rent ours, but they just take it on, post it on all the sites.
Right.
So I'm not sure it's the right way, but it's worked. And so from the site that you used to kind of establish your prices and things, did the demand and the price match up to what's happening right now?
It actually undershot. And that might be because we are reopening out of a COVID pandemic, that there's a lot more demand here and we can raise prices. But even looking at what the prices were before the pandemic, et cetera, because you are able to access that kind of information, it's fairly accurate. I'd say 80%, let's say 80% accurate based on what I've been able to experience in that region I've been looking at.
So what are you doing to mitigate the young mob coming in with 10 friends and using your place?
Wonderful question. Because that's if you look at other owners online and message boards, and what they encounter is the terrible renter, right? And not very often, maybe 5 or 10% of the time, but that could really ruin the experience. So we put an age requirement in, and then we screen everyone with questions, and we ask them to have reviews before they book.
Okay. One of the things we did is we won't take a booking unless it's 1 week.
Oh, interesting.
So it just it drives the price. Maybe you're going to lose somebody for it, but you don't want everybody racking up and $100 each, and there's 12 of them, and they're in there for 2 nights. A lot of things can happen.
That's true.
So maybe the screening part is the key to it. So you don't have to do a 7-night block, but the turnover of cleaners and just all those things, you start to think about how hard that is to get those people to work on your property too.
That's true.
Well, I wonder, do you do anything to protect or secure the property? So do you have, I don't know, cameras in place or any kind of detection in the home to keep an eye on it, I guess, when you're not there?
Yeah, one of the deciding factors behind the decision to do this, aside from being able to access that knowledge that you were never able to access before in terms of demand, how much you might be able to charge, and kind of running early numbers so that you can determine if it's going to be feasible, which you can now do because of websites like AirDNA. The other factor was smart technology. I can monitor who's in and out of the house with cameras. I can monitor noise through noise sensors, temperature, and if someone forgets to turn the oven off, I can turn it off. So completely remote, completely disconnected. I don't have to be there when guests are there. That was a huge factor in doing this.
So in your listing, we have cameras.
Yeah, disclose that. Nothing inside, cameras outside.
Same
but
with us.
I mean, same thing. If two guests book and they show up and there's 15 of them, you know there's going to be an issue and you can start early.
we have one of the cameras we have is a dock camera. And, in our listing, and I've said it, if you want the dock camera turned off, you just got to sign a form. You're not bringing a power boat on up to the property.
Ah, okay.
Any type of motorized, I want to know if you run over half my dock and say, well, it wasn't us, and preferably I don't want a lot of boats in that area type thing if I can avoid. I mean, I have a boat, but I know the depth. I know where I am. I'm not going to come up on my dock at 80 miles an hour and do a hard cut just to spray everybody in the dock, run over somebody. I don't know. You worry about all those things, but you're right. Technology is kind of allowing you to monitor a lot of those things. I mean, I've had people in there kind of on the cusp of colder weather, and they're going on hikes and whatever, but they leave the baseboard thermostats on 23.
Yeah.
And they leave, so during the day, and if they turn it up right away, then obviously they're right there. Nobody's ever done that. So,
right.
You just worried about the cost of all those things, but those are ways to just, keep a good handle on the situation.
Well, one of the cool sensors that you had, I don't know if you still have it installed. You had a water sensor for leaks. Yeah. So in his basement near the water main, I think is where you had it.
Yep.
It'll sense any water on the floor. So if there is a leak, it'll drain down to
two sensors. So there's ones you can put kind of right in the washroom underneath the vanity or right by the main, your water main in the basement. So any water touches the bottom plate, it sends you an alert.
I see.
And so that works really well. The other one we were using was it's called Flow or whatever, and it goes right on your water main. And if it detects a running water for too long, it just shuts the whole water main off. Now, it's caused us a little bit of grief because renters like to have long showers. We figured out with it. So, but it figures out with artificial intelligence. It figures out what appliances are being used based on the water duration and the pressure being used.
Interesting.
So it kind of gives you a listing as shower, washing machine, toilets flushing, and vanities or sinks.
Interesting.
And so I think it was like $500 installed, but you can also then turn the water off from your phone.
Right.
On top of it. So I probably should have put more time into studying how it worked because, we were getting phone calls, the water's off. And well, it's because they're taking 40-minute showers and the thing thinks like there's a break. So the AI didn't catch up, but I think you have to use it for long enough for that AI part to catch up with that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about your door lock? What are you using there? Have you got one of those ones that ties into Airbnb?
We have the Google Nest Yale lock.
Okay. Is that tied to, is that one of the ones that allows you to tie to Airbnb?
Actually, I'm not sure.
Because I know from somebody I know that's got a lot of short-term units here in Edmonton, like just near hospitals and stuff. So they get lots of overnight stays, 2 or 3 nights. But apparently they got a lock, and I think it's the same lock you have at your house, the August locks.
August, yeah.
And it comes also, you can put an external keypad.
Yep.
And so what happens is, based on your rentals, it changes the code, and it emails them a code. And so you're not, download the app or whatever so you can get in.
Right.
Now it's just, here's the code, but it's a revolving code so that once they've used it and their rental's over,
It expires.
That's the code. The code's gone. So that's kind of neat.
That's very cool.
From something like that.
And that technology, I mean, once you get the base down, it takes effort to set it up, the water sensor, et cetera. But if you have enough of that, you have a really good picture of what's going on in your property, even though you're not there. You're not invading any privacy. And you have that certainty that everything's going to be okay. So I think that's a huge bridge as well for people to kind of get towards accepting that it's a feasible strategy.
I would think that narrows that gap, and makes that bridge to saying, okay, I'm going to let strangers use my property, is having the technology in place to look after the house without you actually being there, kind of like being a fly on the wall without actually being there on the wall.
Driveway camera and a noise sensor pretty much can get you 90% of the way there.
Yeah, it can. That driveway camera is huge.
We just had one, 6 guests and there was 8 cars. I don't know if they brought it up. They towed one in or whatever. Is that a side-by-side in there? I can't see with all the trees, So, interesting stuff, right? But I think if you're somebody who's renting those places, you probably got to be really aware that these things, people who are renting them out are well aware of some of those things and that they can check on you. And I mean, Airbnb themselves, for example, have put in a lot of new rules to stop the one-night parties. Because I think, didn't you have a house back where you lived that was being rented out for
Yeah.
kind of they were doing like grads there and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
they were doing
one
big
night
parties.
specials. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, they were hosting 40, 50 people or more, bringing in like event tent rentals and putting them in the yard, like hosting big events.
DJs.
Yeah,
Yeah, big time.
It was big time.
Well, I just, from what I've read over the years, like just places like New York, I mean, they're doing, where they're renting out high-end condos and just basically, turn them into a nightclub for the night, selling tickets to them and stuff like that, getting bartenders in. So it's just a temporary nightclub for a night. Everybody
That's
out
terrifying, right?
That is terrifying. Yeah, that'll keep you up at night.
I don't know if that makes it worth your while, but who knows? So.
Yeah, that's the risk you have to accept. But on platforms like Airbnb, if you're not taking guests without reviews, then you can, because if a guest does that to a host, you know that they're getting a terrible review.
Oh, sure.
So they might open another account using their friend's identity, and they'll have 0 reviews. So as long as you're very stringent on questioning, and you're early if 8 cars show up and 2 guests have booked, you can evict them immediately because they are trespassing from a legal standpoint if they're residing at your property less than 1 month in Canada, or at least.
And if they've lied on the contract.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's kind of like when you go to a hotel and you've got 3 kids. And, you make the other kids stand outside when you check into like 2 queens, right? You're like, okay. I mean, they want to charge extra money. Technically, they've got to put you in a different room. They might have capacities to how many people are allowed in one room and stuff. So there's legal pieces to all of this.
That's true.
And none of us are lawyers. So
Yeah.
we don't have to
Full
go down
disclosure, not lawyer.
Yeah, not a lawyer.
we get our lawyer on here to, add that to the questions. I think so. That's awesome.
Well, that was good. Thanks, Adnan. Thanks for sharing your experience on having vacation rental property. Where can we find you if we're looking for you?
Yeah, you can find me at Digital Embrace. That's our podcast. And on the web at digitalembrace.co, as well as on Twitter and other social media at Digital Embrace with an underscore at the end.
Thanks for watching this episode of Smokin Bulls. You can find out more about us at smokinbulls.com or follow us on social media.